What's up, everybody? It's Noah back again with another video. Today is episode 11, I believe. Uh, Once again, it is still windy in Hawaii, so please bear with me. I'm sorry if you hear gusts of wind or random stuff like that. It's just kind of how it is. I'm sorry. But today, I'm gonna talk about something. But before I do that, I wanted to showcase some cool stuff that I got. I ended up getting a new bowling ball for my birthday. So originally, I have this one, which is called the High Road. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of hard to see because of the glare, and it's also upside down. But basically, it's this blue ball. It was kind of getting old and beat up, so I ended up swapping it out for a new one. I got this one, which is called the Bionic, which is pretty cool. I've heard some good things about it online, and as always, I'm very easily influenced by things that I read online. So I ended up getting it. Um, haven't been able to throw it yet. I don't know when I'm gonna post this episode, but if it turns out that I get some bowling footage of me throwing it, then I don't know. I'll throw it in the corner or something. I'll leave this corner if you want to see me bowl terribly, or I don't know. We'll see. Or I'll throw a screenshot of a score maybe. But as we all know, editing is kind of not my jam, and I have not done it on this channel so far. So uh, that's great. But anyway, the reason I bring it up, at least bowling wise, is I think the topic of today is going to be mainly focused on the idea of progress for the sake of progress. I think it's a topic that I've kind of thought about a lot in terms of my work life, but also it's kind of come up in terms of my bowling practices, where a lot of times I think, especially as engineers, it's a really, really big thing in STEM specifically, I think, and a lot in tech, to where a lot of times progress is your main factor. You always want to be kind of, when you hear stuff from Apple or Microsoft, stuff like that, right? You kind of always hear we're on the cutting edge of this technology, or you want to be on the front lines. You want to be kind of pushing boundaries forward and making progress on things, and when you're not, it's kind of almost seen as a failure. It's not okay just to move laterally in anything you do. And that's kind of almost how I was taught a lot in engineering school, is kind of just the way that it's kind of built, at least curriculum wise, I feel is a lot of times you have to progress. I think, of course, the big thing you hear about a lot of times from engineering students is the schedule. The schedules are pretty hard. Believe me, I mean, if I didn't like what I did, I would not have chosen this life, man. Because Lord have mercy, it is rough. I mean, you're taking almost max credits every quarter. For me, it was quarter because I ended up going to Santa Clara. But if you're doing semester, same thing. You're pretty much maxing out, maybe even overloading some quarters on units. You're pretty much just going, 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 going. Everyone tells you, hey, doing anything on Thursday night? You're like, yeah, doing calculus in my room. You know what I'm saying? That's just kind of how it is. You just have a lot of workload. But I think the big thing is kind of, a lot of times when you take classes in freshman year or sophomore year, a lot of times those have concepts that you kind of just build into the next thing, right? And you just keep building and building and building. One thing you learn the basics, then you keep progressing. And that's kind of how education works generally, I think. But a lot of times when you talk to professors or you're talking to people like that, a lot of times the message you get is you always want to be progressing and getting better over time. And if you're not progressing, that's kind of seen as a negative thing or a failure. And I don't know if it's just the case in STEM, or that's just how it is. But a lot of times I think we get so caught up in making progress for the sake of progress that you kind of lose sight of the journey, first of all. Because I think, when I think about the idea of like progress or progress, right? If making progress, or going somewhere, or being on the leading edge of something is your only goal, then it kind of puts a lot of focus on just the destination of where you're going, and you kind of lose sight of the journey. You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of times you lose sight of the rough days where maybe things are hard, or you want to spend some time to work through something. Because I think a lot of times, especially even through college, there was a lot of times in projects where I felt like I had some rough days where I hit a roadblock, and I had to slow down progress and kind of think through things or work through things. And it was really, really frustrating on some of those days, because I felt like I wasn't progressing as fast as I needed to be. And even the cases now, like at my job, where there's days where, you know, there's like a project that I have due or something, or like I'm working on some work and I feel like I'm not completing it as fast as I need to be, or like I expect myself to be, or like if I feel like I'm not making enough progress on a project, then I feel like the day is almost like a failure, just because like even though I'm learning, right? I'm still learning, of course. I mean, I haven't even hit like a year, and a lot of the stuff that I'm doing for my work is not necessarily things that I do kind of or that I learned from college, but at the same point, I think um I almost like treat those days as kind of like failures in a sense. I'm trying to like get better at it and like appreciate those days a lot more, because at the end of the day, I think a lot of those days where you do struggle and like don't actually make as much progress as you want to kind of gives you like a really really good boost at the end of like dopamine, because like it's kind of like the saying that like nothing easy, or what is it, that nothing worth doing is easy. You know what I'm saying? Like I think a lot of times, if you just get stuck in figuring out like how do I get to X place, or like how do I finish this project faster, or like whatever, you kind of lose track of that. And like instead of taking those days that are hard as like learning lessons or foundation days, where that is kind of like the base of where you are now, and then you kind of build up from there, it's kind of just like, dang, I fell short on my goal today, was a failure. And like chalking up those days as just kind of like negatives is not, one, not healthy, because like you kind of just beating yourself up for like, even if you tried your best, like that's kind of one thing. And two, it's like you do learn things on those days. It's like being able to work through problems that are difficult, because everything is not, I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. You know what I'm saying? It's a really old head take, but um a lot of things that are hard take time. And if you're just focused on where you're trying to get to rather than like how you're getting there, then you just don't learn anything. And then the next time you might have some problem or like a complex problem where it's going to take you time, where you kind of encounter a roadblock, or maybe don't make as much progress as you wanted to on a specific day. Then a lot of times that'll just kind of continue to frustrate you. And so what I've been trying to do is I've been calling those like days where I have maybe not made as much progress as I wanted to on a project, or I'm still learning through working through a program. I've called those kind of like learning experiences, because I think it's better to refer to them as such, because that's what they are. It's not, oh, I failed today because I didn't make progress. It's, I came short, but I did learn something today about myself in terms of problem solving, and also whatever like the task at hand was. And so I think that's a big part of it, of like progress for the sake of progress, is like you kind of just lose sight of the journey a lot of the times. And I think another thing that it could lead to is like pushing goals back. I think a lot of times it happened more so in bowling, but I think it happened too a little bit in like my senior design project, which I hate to admit, but it did happen. Where I felt myself kind of pushing back what my aspirations were, or where my goals were, just because I wanted to like reach some sort of like artificial benchmark so I could feel kind of like happy that I met something. If that makes sense. I think a lot of people do it actually in like projects where, let's say like it's easier to explain in like bowling, right? Let's say like my goal was to shoot like a 250, right? And I kind of set goals in between where I'm like, okay, by X date, I want to be able to like kind of shoot like a 180, then a 200, then a 220, et cetera, et cetera. Like just build up over time. But let's say by the deadline that I wanted to hit like a 200 at, I'm still shooting 180. And so a lot of times what happens, I think for me, was like I would move the goal back. So I'd be like, oh, maybe like give it like a week, another week to do it. Or like maybe I can move the goalpost forward where it's like, 190 is okay, even if I'm not at 200, and it's still an improvement from 180. But like, since I moved the goal back and like I achieved it, I'm like happy about it. You know what I mean? But I think that kind of goes hand in hand with, if your only focus is meeting goals and making progress for the sake of progress, and not like understanding the journey, or like what it takes to do, like go behind it, then um you kind of lose out on the value of it. One, because like you're selling yourself short, right? Like if you're just pushing goals back, or like you're moving your metrics, then it shouldn't really feel fulfilling, even though it might in the moment. But you kind of look back at those times at the end of the day and you're like, dang, you kind of just didn't, you realistically didn't meet your goal. And a lot of times, like, you kind of end up like moving your goalpost so far forward that it's like the end goal that you have, or like the end goal that you ended up wanted to complete in the first place, doesn't really get fulfilled. And you kind of just end up in like this weird middle area where like you kind of feel stuck. I think that's part of it. I think another part of it too is like, when you are in the process of doing whatever it is, right? Let's say in this case it's like shooting a 250, which like I'm trying, but it won't happen. I think a lot of times it's like I was mentioning before, where if you don't really think about like the goal, or you think too much about the goal and you don't realize like it doesn't matter, like, oh, I need to learn about like certain things. Like, for example, I need to learn how to like shoot spares more properly, or like throw my ball a bit more efficiently in terms of like not gripping the ball at the bottom of my swing, etc. Like mechanical stuff. Like, if you don't do that and you just kind of try to force things and not appreciate the journey or the process, and you just want to make progress because you want to progress, like, you kind of just end up with like a lot of like unnecessary frustration, I think, with both yourself and whatever you're working on. So I think that's another section of it. I think there's like almost like another thing that's like on the tip of my tongue and I can't get there. But yeah, I think a lot that's like a really big thing. Basically, it's just like you end up a lot of times just like frustrated, I think, unnecessarily, just because like either you're not meeting your goal of whatever it is you want to achieve, or like you're moving goalposts in. And so later down the line, when you kind of look back at things, it just doesn't seem as like fulfilling, and like you might not even have hit your goal in the first place. Because I think, at least in my experience, when I had that in terms of my senior project, when I like started it, we kind of, me and my partner Wes, who's like a amazing partner, by the way. Wes is the goat. Wes is the goat. But when we kind of started, I had like this kind of really lofty idea of what I wanted the project to be and what I wanted to attain. But then it kind of turned out like, over time, it's like I want to like meet a goal, or like et cetera, et cetera. And so I kind of like ended up moving the goalpost back. And then the final project, while we did end up doing a lot of like really, really cool things and having like some discoveries about the system and whatever projects we worked on, like at the end of the day, I think it wasn't necessarily like the goals that we set in the beginning of like what we wanted things to be didn't actually end up getting achieved, because it's like I moved goalposts back, and I treated the days where you do just have to kind of go through the grind as like a failure. I think a big thing too is like, it's almost tied to, this is the point I wanted to make earlier. Um it's kind of tied to the idea of like a fear of failure. I think, in a sense, I think people are just afraid to like maybe just be a little bit behind, or like not be on the cutting edge, or not be like at the top. Like, I think that's what like everybody wants to have, is like, you want to be the most successful person, you want to be like the richest person, you want to be like in bowling, you want to score the highest, you know what I mean? Like, everything is kind of like a competition. But I think it's not necessarily a bad thing to like set a really, really high goal for yourself and then not be able to achieve it, because at least, like, you do learn something. And if you're not learning something, then that's a problem. But I think it should never be a bad thing to set a goal and then fall short of it slightly, or like fall short in any capacity. It A lot of it is because I think too, like, if you're so afraid to fail, then you don't ever really realize like how much you're really capable of. Because if I'm just setting goals, like, let's say for me, if my dream is to shoot at 250, but my goals are just like, oh, I want to shoot like 150, 160, yeah, I might never fail. But it's like, at the end of the day, if I just like set that low bar for myself and never really try to improve or go out and practice, then I'm probably just going to end up frustrated. And then at the end of the day, when I look back and I'm like, I can't really bowl anymore, or like when you have a project like senior design, right, where like I can't really work on it anymore, it's like, dang, like, I could have had this, but because I wanted to just like make progress, quote unquote, for the sake of progress, or just like reach goals for the sake of like meeting goals to like fulfill some sort of like need to succeed, um, then it kind of turns out that I don't actually end up fulfilled at the end of the day, and I don't reach as high as I could have. Because if I even if I set my goal at 250, let's say I end up shooting short at 200, and I appreciate those days where I'm not accomplishing as much. Maybe like my average went down on the day, or like I had like a small injury that I had to take care of, and I had to not practice for a little bit and come back. Stuff like that. Like I think if you set a high goal, to not be afraid to just like maybe have some days where there's like struggle or feel like you're not meeting your goals, because at the end of the day those days are kind of a lot of, you learn a lot from basically that whole process of like trying to meet something that's really high. And then you can kind of figure out, okay, what am I capable of now, and then maybe like set a realistic goal. Like of course there's like some goals that are like super unrealistic, right? That's like, oh, like I want to make $1 million, right? But even if you fall short, let's say you made 100,000, you still learn. You know what I mean? Like you still learned how to create a successful business. You learned how to like run things, manage finances, stuff like that, that you can take into whatever future venture you make next. And maybe it is like giving yourself a longer time frame to make a mill. But like, if you cut yourself short and say like, yeah, we made 100K, this is good, and you move on, then you kind of don't really know what you're capable of. So I think, I guess like key takeaway for today is like to not be afraid to dream big and set unrealistic goals for yourself or your business or whatever it is, right? For me it's bowling and like engineering, I guess, in my job. But to not be afraid to set high goals or set high bars for yourself, and then even if you fail, to not focus on just like the progress for the sake of progress, or like just to not focus on like the end result, and then focus a lot more on like the journey, and to not worry about days where maybe you're not progressing or making like progress for the sake of just making progress, because it's kind of like fake if you just like, oh, I like met my goal that I moved back, or like whatever, like it doesn't really feel fulfilling. And like to focus more on just like not considering things as, I guess, binary, whether you hit a goal or not is not a pass or fail, and instead mainly focusing on kind of like what you learned throughout the journey. What things can you take away? Maybe it does mean you met your goal, and you set a high bar for yourself, you succeed, and it's like, okay, we can set it even higher next time. So there's a lot of places you can go and a lot of things you can do, and I think we're capable of a lot more than I think we give ourselves credit for. But if we just kind of trot along and make progress for the sake of progress. I feel like I've said that term like 50 times, but you know what I mean, right? Like if all you do is that, and all you focus is just like on the destination, or like being the cutting edge, and that's like all you want to do, like you kind of lose sight of what goes into it, and you lose sight of the journey. So I don't know if it ended up being like a kind of goals oriented episode, but that's kind of just how these roll. They are coherent and non-coherent at the same time. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. As always, like, sub, not subway, but subscribe. And if you have an opinion, please let me know. Comment it down below. I'll always try to be as active as I possibly can be. Also, as a side note, I don't know when this is going out, but I hopefully by this point have had like a community post. I think I'm gonna put. I've been trying to like set a schedule of when my uploads are going out, so I'm gonna try. At least what's been working for me has been Tuesdays and Fridays. Like to release my videos at 8 in the morning, Hawaii Standard Time. So if you're like expecting things to come out, that's when they will. But hopefully I can keep that as consistent as possible. It kind of just works for my schedule. So, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and hopefully you stick around for the next or the previous ones, whatever. But yep, see you later.